Hey, welcome everybody. Thursday Trading. Matthew Pitts here. Looking ready to go. First time in a couple weeks. As we're going through this stuff, it really is a lot of review. I mean, this thing here, I called it this training for your purposes, Leandro. You have to have the right bait. You have to have the right bait. And he starts this chapter off talking about it. Again, a lot of this is really review. I feel like we're just hammering in the same kind of stuff that we've been talking about, which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. As a matter of fact, even in this chapter, there's a few references he makes to quotes from other people. And it does sound to be like a little bit of an exasperation in that why can't we just get our minds around this? And I think it's because it's counterintuitive, right? When we've talked about how we are, it is our own ego. We're self-driven. We're emotional beings first before we are data-driven beings. Granted, data and information is important, but it's not our first response. Our first response is we're emotional people. So automatically, you can remove some salespeople or category of salespeople who feel like the information that they give is more important than the relationship that they develop. And that's just completely false. And I think it's like when I say that, I think I might get a lot of head nodding and a lot of amening, but actually implementing that is, there's a lot of chatter going on. I think it was Sarah. Oh, look at it. She's not at her desk. Thank you, buddy. Thank you, Sarah. All right. So our last book we went through, Everybody Communicates, Few Connect. We talked a lot about how we make a connection. And literally, I think we all know, as it's, pardon the masculine pronoun, but there's an old saying, as a man thinketh, or as a person thinketh. As our paradigm and how we view and how we think about things is going to have a direct impact. And I know I'm bringing sand to the beach with a lot of this stuff, but it's going to have a direct impact on the outcome of your interactions and of your actions. I mean, it is. And I've talked about it, right, Leandro, where it's like, man, when I'm reading this book or I'm reading a book on a certain topic, it skews, and I mean that in a good way. I think it has a negative connotation, but it skews in a very good way the lens through which I see life and through which I see people and I see relationships and I see opportunities to connect with people. Matter of fact, I'm coming up with ideas, many of which are being shot down by my wife right now, which is a good thing, right? We don't want to run off and do something without, happy wife, happy life. But she, I was thinking about doing like a live orientation on Thursdays right before this for new people, just to go over some basic stuff. And right, it sounds good at jump, but Stacy makes some very compelling arguments on why that might not be the best route for us to go. Mm-hmm. I say all that to say that idea came out of an undying urge to connect more with people. And certainly this is part of it, right, Leandro? I mean, this is doing Zoom and everything. That's one of, there are some decent things that have come out of this season of COVID. And, we talked about it on the Monday call, being able to spend time with family, eat at home more and doing more. I'm a homebody anyway. I'm an introvert with an outgoing personality, if that makes any sense at all. Like, I like being outgoing. I like meeting people, but I do need my alone, it's not really alone time. It's more in the bubble time, right? In the nest is what we call it at the house. So anyway, making those, hold on just a second here. So making the connections is how everything starts. And the way we view things is going to impact on how we impact the world. And we talk a lot about association, right? And the power of association. That's not only personal association, which is extremely powerful. Matter of fact, if you think like you would be a good drinker and bowler, go hang around with people who drink and bowl, because sooner or later you're going to be drinking and bowling with them. We're a product of our environment. You might say, well, I like to go in and I'm an agent of change in those environments. And that's great, but you got to pick your battles because there's only so much energy. You walk into something like that where you're trying to change things, it's really going to drain your energy. And we talked a lot about that when we're really pouring into others, when we're investing, when we're sacrificing for organizations, for people, for self, for children, whatever. We need to be refilled. And that's what this is, Quadrant 2 time, right? Where we meditate, we plan, we, change our oil in our car. It's those activities that are extremely important, but not necessarily urgent. And how many people do you know spend all of their life? And I'm going somewhere with this, guys. I'm not just rambling on. How many people do we know spend a great deal of their life in Quadrant 1, where everything is important and everything is urgent? Let's distinguish. Now, it's the quadrant 1 in and of itself is not bad. You have to be there. I mean, if you're driving along and somebody hits you and at no fault of your own, you're in quadrant 1. You've got important and urgent things you need to take care of. However, if you're riding around on bald tires and you pop a tire, yes, you're in quadrant 1, but we could have avoided that by getting our tires changed when it wasn't urgent, but it was important. Does that make sense? It's like running out of gas. Like, I hate getting gas. And I have a big truck. It's like 25 gallons. And God forbid you get on one that's not working right. And it's slow. Or it's too fast, right? And it clicks off every time. I'm telling you, man, I got PTSD on getting gasoline. So the reason I say that is because if people, track with me on this, if people are always in quadrant 1, how then? Because quadrant 1 requires everything, right? Daughter gets in a car accident. Everything stops. I'm quadrant 1 and I'm going. And we know people, I think some people, honestly, Leandro, identify themselves by the problems that they're incurring and solving. I mean, I know some people, there's never no drama. There's always drama. And that to me is quadrant 1, right? So when we're there, and I'll let you come up with your own conclusion on this. But the entire premise of chapter 3 is having the right bait. It's thinking about what the other person wants more than what we want. If we're in quadrant 1, and again, I'll leave you to answer it for yourself, how apt or how inclined is someone who's, running around that crazy box we call quadrant 1, how apt are they to really stop and consider the needs, cares, and concerns of others instead of themselves? In quadrant 1, it's a self-preservation phase, right? It's defense mechanism. It's reactionary. And I just don't see how you can be in that quadrant and be thinking about other people. And when I think about that, we talked about it before when, the rent's not paid and you need, we got to make money by making sales. And, I call it commission breath. And really, obviously, our breath isn't any different, but our attitude is different. Our paradigm, our lens is different because now, just like when I read this and I tweak my lens to a perfect view where I see people the way I want to, I see people from a standpoint of who I want to be, it can be just as bad if I'm thinking about what I need when I'm trying to make a connection and influence people. He does a great job in this chapter of coming up with a bunch of examples, you all, and I get it all the time. It's one thing to say, yeah, you got to figure out how to make them want to do it, but how do you do that? He has several examples in here of letters that were written, and he goes, let's picture if it were written from this standpoint. Instead of, hey, our company needs this, we want to do this, our goal is this, our endeavors are this. It's more, and one of the better ones was, it was like a terminal hub. And one letter was written like, hey, you're sending your drivers, at 4 p.m., which is when all our others do. It's causing us to pay our employees overtime. I mean, just how it affected their business. And you guys read it yourselves. I don't want to, I don't need to, I guess I should paraphrase for the purpose of making a point. But the other one was like, hey, we have been, we have so appreciated our relationship for 14 years. We know that you want your packages to be shipped in a timely manner. And then he talks about how sometimes their shipments are held up because of the congestion. And it's their desire to get those shipments out, properly and with a smile. And it was just a different approach. And the whole thing seemed different. So let me get into my notes a little bit. Like I said, I call it, you got to have the right bait. And the question is, and he poses it, it's not mine, in that, like, when we're fishing, are we thinking of what we want, or are we trying to identify what the fish is looking for? There's several reasons I'm not a good fisherman. I'm actually an okay fisherman if I'm invited. Like, I don't have any tackle. I don't know where to go. You could hold up anything other than a big mouth bass, and I probably wouldn't be able to name the fish. But I do enjoy going with people who have all that. I can pay the money, right? I need the guide. And thankfully, I've never been out, but my brother-in-law is a charter fisherman. And I've never been on this boat, so if that tells you anything. But the analogy is great nonetheless, even though I'm not certain what you call a fisherman. And that is, like, I don't know what bait to use anywhere. I wouldn't know which one is salt, which one is freshwater. But if I really wanted to be successful in fishing, I would probably have to sacrifice some time and learn about the fish, learn about the area that I'm fishing in, make myself aware of what's going on. And so I love that analogy, because I think that's one of the few times where innately we're thinking about the desires of something else other than ourselves. And all that's selfishly motivated, right? Why are we fishing? We want to catch fish. So we're trying to get what a great analogy. What's the old saying? To get where you want in life, you need to first help others get what they want. I want to fish. I got to first give the fish what he wants before I can get the fish, right? It's just, it all comes together, man. I get excited because it becomes more simple, right? It's not 1,000 points. There's only a few points. And I'll give you a great example. We have an amazing dog. His name's Max. Leandro is one of his favorite people in the world. And I mean that. Like when he comes in, he goes straight to Leandro. Max is a golden doodle, mini or medium size. He's about 30 pounds. Wicked smart. I mean, like, I might teach him to play rummy. I mean, I'm talking smart. And you have a treat, and he can stay. You can hold a steak in this hand and say, leave it, and he won't. He can give you a high five. He can spin around. He can lay down. He can roll over. He's amazing. But the minute you don't have a treat in your hand, he's got a nickname that I cannot say, but even though you have a treat, if you do not have a treat in your hand, it might happen, it might not. Last night it didn't happen. Stacy couldn't even get him to come. He just sits there and looks at you. And I'll tell you another thing. Last night, we have a golf cart at the house, and Catherine and I walked out in the garage. You'll love this, Leandro. And Max follows us, and we go back into the garage. Max loves to go out on the cart. So he jumps in the cart, lays on the seat, and then we're like, come on in, Max. And he didn't move. He knows what we're saying. So you know what we ended up doing? Putting on our stuff and took it for a cart ride. Little jerk, right? He played me. He's like, he wants me to come. So he's got to, you know what I mean? Like, oh, man. The whole point is, if you don't have what someone desires, if it's not, even my dog, if it's not what they want to do, you can't get them to do it. And that's the key. It comes through. We talked about the different levels of leadership, right? You got a positional leadership right now. And that is, hey, everybody, I'm doing something new. I got the greatest CBD products in the world. I hope you'll, here, click this and get some free CBD, see if you love it, that kind of thing, right? So that's a positional, like you have the badge. I'm a CBD BioCare guy or gal. But then when you build a relationship and you start answering questions and asking great questions and solving problems and helping people achieve what they want to achieve, all of a sudden you then become what's called the second level of leadership, which is permissional. And that doesn't mean somebody's like, hey, Leandro, I give you permission to lead me. It's just in their heart and their spirit. There's a relationship, a connection that's building. And that's how you do it. And we were doing a lot of analytics. We have been doing a ton of analytics lately. And I got to tell you, like, subscriptions are the way to go, right? Because if you can talk, you help somebody achieve what they want to achieve, whether it's sleeping at night, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, whatever it is, and they find that relief, they found what they were looking for. If you've got a connection, that will last. Folks, it's not about price. And we haven't gotten a rash of that. I don't know why I said it like that. I guess because all my life, as I've taught sales, you have people that say, hey, if you could sell it for less, if we could give a bigger discount, if we could do that. It's like, no, build the value. When I was in the financial service business, and it wasn't just me. The way we developed this is how we approached people. So we had great numbers and we had great recidivism rates and we had great connections with people. And that's why. And I'm telling you, we would always brag when the client would say, hey, I had another product that I was looking at that was cheaper than yours, but we really wanted to do business with you. That's the best compliment you can ever get. Now, I'm telling you, when I did it right, for those of you who don't know, I've also disclosed that there was a big period of time where I did it wrong. I put up good numbers, but I didn't build relationships, and I was always plugging holes because I was losing business left and right. You know what I mean? So oh boy, man, I just get going. That reminds me of the story of that old dog on the boardwalk. Picture an old saloon. I know that most of you guys heard this. Some of you may not have, but picture an old saloon, and the boardwalk that goes out in front, the swinging doors. Well, the guy's walking up into one of those saloons, and on his left is a big old dog. And the dog's just howling. He walks by and he looks, and he's like, golly. He walks in and he hears it again. He orders a beer from the bartender and he hears it again. And finally he goes, hey, man, what's going on with that dog out there? And he says, well, he's laying on a nail. He said, you know how the wood over time, it compresses, but the length of the nail remains. So he's laying on one of those, and that nail's jabbing him up here in the ribs. And the guy says, well, why the heck doesn't he move? And the bartender says, doesn't hurt enough yet. My wrong way of doing business didn't hurt for a while, but then it hurt enough where I was like, I got to change. So I do have experience of working with this stuff. It's not just crap I read out of a book. Okay. All right. So the idea is, and he does a great job of identifying what people want. There was a great story of a little child who was wet in his bed. They then took him to buy and pick out his own bed because he shared a bed with his grandmother. This book was written in the 1920s. Who shares a bed with their grandmother anymore? Leandro's like, I do. You mean like as of this year?
I used to back then.
I'm sorry, I got tickled with that. And so they took him to buy his own bed, and then it was his bed. And it was different. His motivation was different. There's one in here, and I mentioned on the Monday call, it was Ralph Waldo Emerson and his son were out on their farm trying to get a calf to move, and it wouldn't move. And Miss Emerson, who had never written an essay or a paper, sees it from the kitchen window, and she walks out, and the way it says it puts a maternal finger into the calf's mouth so it could suck on it, and then just let him right in. They're pushing and pulling and struggling. She walks out, gives him what he wants, which is the comfort, right? And leads him right with that. So some great analogies, smoking analogies, great in there on, how he ties it to athletics. And, there's an eating analogy. I mean, there's just this book, this chapter is really good at answering that question. It's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, but like I need to see what it looks like. He does a good job with this. And like I said, he does it later with, how to craft things based on the needs of others. Let me stop there and catch a breath and a sip and ask if there's any errors, omissions, cares, concerns, comments, questions.
We're willing to make comment. No, everybody's so much in tune with what you're saying.
All right, we'll keep going. Is everybody all right? I feel like I do a lot of talking. Usually when I do these things, it's very interactive in a room. So again, I know I've been crying about that for 2 months now. All right. There's a couple of quotes that I wrote down in here. And one of the reasons that I do it is, and I actually type it, is because it's meaningful to me. So for whatever reason, the way I learn, if it comes through my hands in any way, it really embeds itself. And so some of them I look at because I think they're cute and I want to read them out of the book. Some of them I actually type them out. Mm-hmm. Every act since the day we were born was because we wanted something. Mm-hmm. Every act. And then he has what people might think is an exception to the rule is donating your time to Red Cross. Well, yes, I mean, that is a selfless act, but at the end of the day, the reason we did it is because we were led to make a difference and to, right? So, I mean, there is self-gratifying qualifications in every contribution. So I agree with his statement, and I did try to, critically think it and try to identify an exception to the rule, but I couldn't. Action springs from whatever we desire. The only way to influence people is to talk in terms of what they want. And again, we're so egotistical, selfish beings by nature. That's the human condition. That's not a criticism of anyone. It is the human condition. It is, I mean, my son is turning 14 and he's just now figuring out that the whole world doesn't revolve around him. Just now, right? Which I think is advanced for a boy, right? He's actually very mature. So there's certain questions, like certain autoresponders I have in my head. And I'm not going to list a bunch of them, but one of them is when I'm asked a question, my first autoresponder in my head is, why are they asking? Because many times questions are loaded. And then 2, do I want to answer it? And the second one is to remind myself that if it's up to me to answer. I don't have to if I don't want to, type thing. So another one is, I'm a man of faith. It's like, what would Jesus think about it? That's a good one to ask yourself. What would Allah think about it, or whatever your faith is. Mm-hmm. And another one that I want to incorporate into my thinking, and I have used this before, and I think at one time it was a semi-autoresponder, but to ask ourselves the question, how can I make them want to do it? I mean, like if I were to ask myself or have that on a piece of paper where I could look at it before I made every interaction, I think it would, I know for me personally, it would help me, my lens to skew so that I have the proper viewpoint on how to connect with people and how to care about them. Because I'm telling you, I mean, like Stacy, maybe not. I do like maybe Leandro, maybe not. Honestly, there's some people I meet that are just, they're kind of always selfless, kind of always thinking about other people. But most people I think are like me, and it's a counterintuitive mechanism. It feels like I'm always kind of, paddling it upstream with it because my human condition gets in my way. You know what I mean? Does that make sense, everybody? All right, good. I'm seeing some heads bob. It reminds me of that song. Heads bobbing like, you remember that?
Yes.
I can't do the rest of it, but and I don't know the words before it. I just know that heads bobbing. Yep. And like, all right. If there's any one secret of success, it lies in the ability to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's angle as well as our own. You talk about, I mean, there's certain things that I think from a human condition, excuse me real quick. From a human, man, I got horrible allergy. I took 2 Zyrtec today and I'm still feeling it, man. Excuse me, guys. There's certain things that are, to me, counter to the human condition, understanding, our ego and our selfishness in nature, but that there are certain things that are culturally counterintuitive. And this is one of them. And I want to tread lightly, but purposefully. I've said this before. In high school, one of my favorite classes was debate class. I really enjoyed putting together an argument, right? A position. And a lot of times we would have to, select, like if it was abortion, which side would you be on? I'll be on this side, I'll be on this side, and the teacher would swap you. And you'd have to engage on the other side of the podium, is how I call it. I very, very much enjoyed that class. And I remember at a season not all too long ago, I had relationships, and I still have a few, where that kind of still exists. We can have an open exchange of opinions and ideas and viewpoints and not get angry with one another, not be that there's that ego, right? Like, how dare he not think that Eric Clapton's the greatest guitarist in the world, right? Have you ever had people, hey, who's your favorite football team? The Buccaneers. Wrong. It's like, you can have you know what I mean? In this culture, and again, I want to tread light, I don't want to offend anybody, but in this culture right now, it seems like if there's an opinion and a differing opinion, there's automatic animosity. And so culturally, depending on what you and me are associating ourselves with, I can tell you this. If a person is watching the news, mainstream media all day, every day, this will almost be impossible. This to get the other person's point of view and see things from that person's perspective. I tell James this still today, and it's kind of our joke, and he knows it, but it's so knee jerk. And it's like, I ask him, I tell him, I'm shocked that at this stage in the game, you're still surprised that other people have differing opinions. I'm shocked. It's like, who would buy that car? And it's like, son, there's a butt for every seat. You have to know that. Right. So I think that that's hard, but honestly, that's where it's at. And we are a microwave society, so that's counterintuitive too. I mean, to engage in a relationship, we've talked about that. It takes time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes sacrifice. It's not the easiest thing to do, especially when you know that there are personal issues going on. There are medical bills. There are things stacking up, and we do need to produce results. And it's very difficult to balance that. And that's one of the reasons why I think every entrepreneur, or put it this way, every person who gets up and has to actually go out and hunt and gather their own money should read every day. I honestly, I don't know how you can't. And it's always been relevant, but I think it's even more relevant now because of the society we're living in, the conditions of our culture in this country right now. I think that there's no better time to, I have there's a scripture that's long, but as part of it, it says, as for me and my house, we shall. And in the scripture, it says, serve the Lord, but you put anything you want. As for me and my house, we shall live in peace. As for me and my house, we shall protect ourselves from those things that we don't want in our home. As for me and my house, we shall hold firm to our values and not let that be shifted and moved by the winds of hate, change, whatever you want to call it. And that's why I said we call it the nest, because it is. And I hope your home is a nest. I hope we all have a place of respite, all have a place where we can go and feel good about our Quadrant 2 activities, right? Building relationships, investing in people, investing in ourselves. I mean, here we are.
I call them my center.
Yeah, your center. And listen, if the center is strong, then it should withstand those winds of circumstance. And listen, I don't mean to make light of a circumstance. I know that there's people going through some real stuff right now. So to say it's a hell of a lot easier to implement. It doesn't make it less true, though. There are some letters in here that I think you should go through. Let's see. They're kind of in the middle of the chapter. I think there's 3 or 4, Leandro, but they're really good as far as giving examples of a different tone. And they're not radically different. I mean, I wouldn't say it's subtle. It's somewhere between subtle and radical. Like, it's not radical, it's not subtle. It definitely is a change in it. But I think it's illuminating on how he approaches it through those letters. So I hope you'll all take time to look at that. Yeah, there's another quote in here, and I would agree with this, you all. And the reason I say this is because I trained sales for years and just, huge rooms, and you get a lot of stories and a lot of individual questions, really before and after the training session, right? Is where you start really learning about people. And, if you've got good material and you got people that have, and typically when I would do this, people would have to travel. Most people would have to travel to be there. So they really wanted to be there. So they're there to make the most of it. So there was a lot of interaction, like I said, before and after. And it was really there that you begin to see over the years these amazing consistencies. And so I read this, and this is why I think I wrote it down. So many salespeople are pounding the pavement, wondering why they are not successful. They are only thinking of what they want. I'm not kidding. Heck, I did it till I was probably 32, 33 years old. And I was always considered a good salesman, a high producer, a good performer. And I was doing it wrong. I've always said this, the worst thing that can happen, like, I'll give you an example. This, we don't do a good, and we are changing a lot of our onboarding to more accurately reflect the company that we are today, as opposed to we were when we really kind of created our platform. And hold on just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so we're changing our platform a little bit, and man, now I forgot where I was going with it, Leandro. I got distracted by trying to recall something there, but we'll get back to it. The consistencies. So watching people continue. Okay, so here's where I was getting at. What we're going to talk more about now is that we do have, because we have our marketing challenge, right? And for those of you who may or may not know, I think everybody out here knows what that is. We basically give you what to post every day. I mean, and it's relative to holidays, and no one would like National Cheeto Day or whatever's going on. Our marketing department does a fantastic job of creating assets for you all to use, and you literally just go through and do it. We have training on Monday and today. We have a system or a process, not down to finite what you should be doing every 10 minutes, in the life of a salesperson. We're not that microed in, but we have a process and a system that works. So one of the worst things that can happen, and it could be, is that someone come aboard, they do something outside of our process. In other words, they don't subscribe to this, or they haven't heard of make a connection, sacrifice, be about others, ask great questions, know more about them than they know about you, not because we're trying to be secretive, but because we're more curious, and kind of do what I did when I was younger, right? And go out and create their own kind of prism or lens that they're looking at. And it might be money, it might be sales boards, it might be competitions, it might be a, contest, any of those things, and find a little bit of success. Because that's what happened to me. I wish I'd have failed miserably from day one, because I would have, it's like I became a decent baseball player. You want to know why? Because I was sitting on the bench. Back then, you didn't have to play everybody. If you weren't the top 9, you didn't play. So all my buddies were playing ball. I don't want to sit the bench anymore. So I worked my ass off, and I ended up being the star player on the team. I wish that would have happened. That failure is a great teacher. for those who really want to succeed. If the nail hurts enough, we're going to move. And I wish the nail would have jabbed me when I was 22, man. I mean, I'd be a billionaire right now. Or maybe not, but it's fun to think about. All right. Let me get a sip. Let me take a breath. Any comments, suggestions, questions, cares, concerns?
No, but we got 2 new people.
Yay. Who's new today? Sam Berg looks new. I don't want to say somebody, but like, no, I've been here for a year.
We got Joe and we got Sam.
Joe Petroselli. I don't know. He's on the Monday a lot.
Really?
Yeah.
It's the first time that I've seen him.
Well, he was, I'm not going to get any details, but he had to step away for some issues, but he's back. He's got a real good recruiting plan. He wants to build a big sales team. All right. Quote on page 42, and then I'm pretty much done, dude, unless we got some questions or anything. This is a really short little chapter. I hope you guys are enjoying I like this book, but I recognize, unlike James a lot of times, that there's, differing opinions. And I know this is an older book and it's got more history in it, but I'm kind of a nerdy when it comes to quasi-relevant information, right? So anyway, let me get this quote. It's on page 42. The world is full of people who are grabbing and self-seeking. So the rare individual who unselfishly tries to serve others has an enormous advantage. He has little competition. So the rare individual who unselfishly tries to serve others has an enormous advantage. He has little competition. Owen D. Young is the guy who, and I actually typed that too. Yeah. Well, I started with the rare. The rare individual who unselfishly tries to serve others has an enormous advantage. He has little competition. First arouse in someone an eager want. First arouse in someone an eager want. And I'll touch on one more thing before we shut it down. He does talk about a guy who was selling insurance, and there were 2 agents in one territory. One came by and said it one way. The next guy came by excited, eager, had an attitude, had an energy about him. And I ended up writing the policy and doubling the coverages for these people. So have an excitement in your life, have an energy, and it can't be fake, right? You got to find your peace. And I've mentioned this before. I had a mentor one time, and I hope everybody has a mentor or someone that they can counsel with. Mentor sounds so subservient, but it's not. It's just someone you really do give permission to. I mean, I do have some accountable brothers where I literally articulated, you have permission to hold me accountable. You have permission to, if you see me stepping outside of what you know to be my value system, to say, hey, brother, that doesn't look right. Does that make sense? Tim was one of these guys, but he was a mentor as well, just a brilliant guy. And I asked him once, I said, Tim, how does a man find excellence in these 3 categories? Business, home life, and spiritual life. And he looked at me and he, very direct man, which is one of the reasons why I like him. Everybody here will tell you I'm pretty direct myself. And he said, Pitch, your thinking's all wrong. And I said, how so, Tim? And he goes, it's not 3 things. It's one thing. Well, let the marinate on that for a little bit, because I think it's going to have a slightly altered interpretation to each listener. I mean, I know what it means to me, and that is, if I do something that's good for my business, then it wouldn't ever be bad for my family or my spiritual life if it's the right thing to do. Does that make sense? So it's all one thing. I know we're talking about influencing people and, leadership, which is boiled down to its finest essence, is influence, but it can't be its own thing. There's no way we're going to put on our CBD hat and become anything other than who we are authentically. So there's no way to really go to the tip of the sword and change things. You got to change things with how you're holding the sword. I always use that bat. My son is a really good hitter, and he's been with an amazing professional baseball coach. Matter of fact, most times we go over there's professional players there. And I have this analogy because his whole thing, and it's not new, is you don't think about the bat hitting the ball. You think about your balance, your approach, the direction of your hands. If your hands go out, you're done. If your hands go down, you're done. Your hands have to come through like this. The knob has to get as far as it can, because when it does, and it's done right, this happens automatically. But how many people try to go right where the point of contact is to change things? You can't. If you don't correct this approach that's wrong, you're never going to make the kind of contact you want to make. So that's why reading every day matters. That's why Quadrant 2 activity matters so much, because the only way to really change your life is to change the way you think. The way you think will change your daily habits. Your daily habits will change your outcome. Some outcomes are good. Some are not good. That we call failure, adversity. That is a better teacher than success. So I don't know if you guys know this, but my son took up skimboarding. And when I was a kid, I skimboarded too. And I went out there with him, and the board's longer now. They're more durable. I mean, I'm thinking, all right, I can't wait. It's a hell of a lot harder when you're 49 than when you're 16. So like on the second rung, I did something where I think all my toes got curled up, because I still, to this day, it's a month later, I still have a swollen foot from like the worst 5 turf toes at one time. It was awful. And the only reason I think that happened is because the top of my toes were scraped up from the shells. The whole point is, we were in this horrible little area where there was broken shells everywhere. And after that fall, I knew I'd hurt myself, but I kept going for another hour. The adrenaline, right? The water was cold. I didn't really feel it until I was leaving the beach. And I was like, man, I did something wrong. But the whole point was, we had to change. I looked at James and I go, I need a better place to fall. I know I'm going to fall again if I really want to do this today. And by the way, I was ripping it up by the end of the day, Leandro. I got on top of a wave and came down. It was pretty cool. But the point is, it's like, I didn't want to stay there and try not to fall. I'd rather go someplace where I had the ability to fail. And I'll close with this prayer, and that is a prayer of thanks. And especially in light of what happened yesterday, I know that it's hard to even kind of get through the day, seeing some of the photos and images, and you wouldn't even think that was happening in America. But I do thank God I hope every day, I'm sure I miss a few, that we live in a country where we have the freedom to go fail as many times as we need to succeed. And, find a place where you can fall and know that that's a part of you mastering the skill. Right? You have to. You're not going to master or become really proficient at anything without massive amounts of failure. I mean, honestly. All right, man. I tell you, I could just go and go and go. Thank you so much for your time. We've got 14 minutes or an hour and 14 minutes. If you guys want to engage or have any questions, I'm absolutely willing to stick around. I ain't got no place to be. But other than that, I think we're all good.
All right. Chris says nothing exists in a vacuum, and Beatrice, she cannot join in, but she's listening. There's a fever, not feeling well.
Oh, Beatrice.
Yes. So
yeah. You're on the active list, Beatrice. And if anybody else wants to be on that list, I got a direct line into the big man. We'll put you on there, man, quick. All right, you guys, have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for joining me and spending some time in Quadrant 2. It's like lifting, right? It's like doing curls. The first week, I mean, I'm sore, but I don't see anything, right? And it's the consistent. I tell really anybody who would listen to me that long periods of time engaged in right activities produce great results. The longest trip between me and my dream is a shortcut. They just don't exist. So thank you for taking the long way around with me today. I hope you guys have a fantastic day. Leandro, as always, thank you very much. I appreciate your guidance and service and support, my friend. All right, you guys have a great day. We'll see you Monday morning live. We got a lot of stuff going on. Tell your neighbors, tell your friends. We'll see you then. Bye, everybody.